Today's Heart Talk is on investing in life. Investing in life, right? We invest in the little moments, the traditions, the rituals that we choose, not that are just imposed upon us, but the ones that we say, this is what I want to cultivate in my life, right? By the way, I'm just going to start to go and see what comes through. If you guys do have a question or comment, just raise your hand and then we'll bring it into the conversation. Sound good? Cool. So investing in life. This is a really interesting one. Last week, we were actually talking about to stop rushing life. And these two topics are very related. Because what we were finding last week is that people are rushing through life. They're looking for shortcuts. How many of you in here have been looking for shortcuts in your life? Be honest, right? That shortcut to, oh, maybe if I just do this and I get a whole bunch of money, then I can be happy. Or maybe if I can just find that right soulmate, then I'll find love and everything. But you're trying to take a shortcut as if you could go to the grocery store and be like, yes, perfect partner, put that there, and oh yeah, abundance and wealth, put that there. That's not how it works. We get to cultivate life. And to cultivate something is to invest in it. Right? And relationships is actually a great topic for that. So we'll play around with that theme. Right? Investing in relationship. How many of you have thought of your relationships in that way? As an investment? Some of you, good. Most of us, I think, unconsciously, we think of relationships as conveniences, right? We're not really thinking of them as something that we're investing in. We've been fooled by all these movies, right? Hollywood that says, okay, you find the one, you go through this massive journey and adventure with them, and then you come together at the end and you ride off into the sunset happily ever after. But the reality is, the first part, that's the easy part. It's once you commit in, then you say, hey, I'm here. And we're going to cultivate something. We're going to build something together. Rather than trying to find the shortcut or find the perfect thing or the ideal thing, you create that in your life by investing into something you choose. I'm going to say that again. You create the ideal in your life by investing into something you choose. What I mean by that, and I'll use relationships again as an example. So often, I see this here, especially in Ubud, where I'll see some people starting to connect in, and maybe I know both of them in different ways, and I'll come up and be like, oh, are you guys a pair now? Like, what's going on? And almost always I get the same response. They'll say, well, I don't know. We're seeing where it goes. We're playing it out, right? I can tell them right then, it's going nowhere. And even if it does go somewhere, it's going to dissolve eventually because they haven't chosen. They haven't said, I'm choosing to develop something with this person. You see the difference? And wouldn't you say that even for yourself in your own life, one of the things that you want the most, especially if it's in relationship, is to be chosen in that relationship, right? And to be able to choose the relationships and the activities and the feelings and the emotions and the experiences that you have, right? There's power to choose. You're not just choosing kind of like randomly going, okay, you, right? But you're choosing based on where you've already done your work, right? And we've all heard this in how we're going about life, right? And especially in relationships, that we tend to find people that reflect something that we're going through, or that maybe we've not been seeing, or maybe a different angle of whatever it is that we've been going through, right? And part of that is that there's an unconscious choice that's happening there. It's a magnetism. And this is what's called trauma bonds, right? Happens a lot in relationships, right? Yeah. And they can last for many years because they stayed unconscious. The point of choosing is to make it conscious, and that includes discernment, right? That includes saying, okay, I'm choosing this person, and I'm not just choosing them because they fit the resume and they checked off all the boxes. How many of you have a checklist? Anybody? Yeah, see, I know. Christina had a checklist, and she was like, yeah, we can work on that one. Right? But here's the problem with the checklist. Your checklist hasn't allowed you to actually start to look at the person not just as whether they're the perfect thing, but are they willing to grow with you? That's the biggest difference. Because you're very correct. Everybody has traumas and different things that are going on in their history, most of the time unconsciously. Most of the time that they're unaware of. They're blind spots. But as we all know in relationships, those blind spots, we're like spotlights. We're like, there it is. There it is. And all of a sudden you start noticing all the things you didn't want to notice or you weren't noticing before. And that's when most people bail. Because instead of saying, oh, I'm in this relationship, I've made this choice in my life because I'm investing in it, more so they were like, oh, this makes me comfortable now, It's convenient. Oh, it's not comfortable anymore. It's now inconvenient. I'm out. Right? And that's what I mean by most people are looking at relationships as a convenience, not an investment. An investment requires something from you. You have to be putting into it. And it's interesting, if any of you have actually looked at like stock investing and stuff like that, or real estate, you don't do it once. And that's the shortcut that people keep looking for. They're going, maybe I just one time I give that compliment. One time I do that, loving gesture. One time I do the work towards my project. One time I do this. And then we're hoping that that one time will have a massive result. But the truth is, what we really want to be doing is saying, oh, you know what? I'm going to make this my standard. I'm going to make this the routine, the habit, that every single time that I text my wife, there's a little emoji of a heart or a smile or something. And literally, if you look at our stuff, it's just all graphics, right? All emojis. Because we chose to make that investment. An investment is compounding, right? Even when you see these ads, sometimes they're like, if you put $100 in to Apple today, then, by the age of 30, you would have blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's not giving you the full effect. It's saying if you put $100 in every single month going forward, then it compounds. It's not that first 100, right? That's going to give you very little as you go. Same thing in relationships, same thing in life. You invest and then you keep investing. It's consistency. This metaphor of a garden as being your life, right? And you're planting certain seeds that you want. The question is, how many of you are actually intentionally, consciously planting the seed that you want? Because I think most of the time we haven't even figured out what we want from relationship, from life, for ourselves. Because I ask this question to people all the time. Every time I do a one-on-one session with people, it's the first question I ask. What do you want? And the answers are always very interesting to me. People will be like, well, I just don't want to suffer anymore. It's been such a hard year, and I don't want to be sick, and I don't want to have heartbreak, and I don't want to be poor, and I don't want this, and I don't want that. I go, oh, that's what you're avoiding. What do you want? Not what do you not want. What do you want? And it's a tough question. When we really ask ourselves that, there's like this little block that comes up, and it kind of gets in the way, a little barrier that's there. And then people will say to me, they're like, I don't know. I don't know what I want. And I think that's BS. It's a belief system, right?
You've got to manifest it to get it there. You've got to want it and manifest it.
Not just want and manifest. This is good. This is part of it. But you have to give yourself permission too. That, for me, is what the key is. So often, we actually do know what we want. I don't think anybody doesn't know what they want, because why would you be disappointed when you don't get it? If you didn't know what it was. We know what we want. But maybe we haven't recognized we have permission to have it. And that permission piece is the key. When you realize you have permission, you also realize you have the power to choose. And in choosing, you also have the power to cultivate and create, which is the manifesting, right? That's how we start to invest in something. But if you've already decided at some point in your mentality and psyche that you don't deserve it, that you're not worthy of it, how many of you have had that little whisper in your ear? Right? It's a dangerous whisper that comes up. I'm going to say something incredibly counterintuitive, especially in a community like Bali. It's true. You're not enough. Right now you guys are like, he was good up until that point. Let me explain. It's not that you're not enough because you're not showing up 100%. Because if you were showing up 100%, the math is there. You're enough. Most of the time we're not showing up 100%. We've divided and fragmented ourselves all over the place, right? Into those moments of past relations or past experiences or conditions or scenarios that left an impact. By the way, when we talk about trauma, that's what it is. It's an impact in our lives. Sometimes, most times negative, but not always. Sometimes it's a super positive impact that traumatized us, right? So we often think of trauma as only negative. It can be both. But that impact then holds us, and we put a little bit of energy into it. And because maybe, whether it was positive or negative, we look at it and we're like, okay, I want to either avoid that happening again or I want to hold on to that. So let me put a little piece of myself as like a sentry there to watch over it, make sure that it's controlled. And as we do that, we're dividing ourselves and taking pieces of who we are in the present moment away. We do the same in our defense mechanisms, in the walls that we create, the roles that we play, the masks that we wear. All of it, it's a fragment of who you are. And then all of a sudden, you've been putting so many fragments into so many moments, and most of the time out of a protective measure, right? They're defense mechanisms. that you might have all these walls and barriers and you're on the furthest piece out, your consciousness, and you're looking out and then you look back. You start this self-discovery journey, right, that many of you might be on while you're here in Bali. And you look back and you're like, well, crap. That's not enough. It's not enough. It's not worthy. Because you're only looking at like 10% of who you are. Now this goes also, we'll look again at relationship. How many of you have come out of a hard relationship, or especially if it was a hard breakup, and the first thought in your mind was, I lost myself somewhere in there? Right? Now it's not like you actually lost yourself, because you're right there, right? But what you're thinking is, you probably throughout that relation weren't investing in what you wanted, but you were probably investing in what you didn't want, right? Oh, I don't want them to leave. I don't want them to cheat. I don't want them to do this. I don't want to suffer in this. And in every single one of those measures of protection that you're putting a piece of yourself. Instead of adding to yourself by saying, ooh, I want to feel joy. Yep, I'm going to take that in. Ooh, I want to feel freedom. Oh, I'm going to take that in. Ooh, I want to feel abundant with this person. I want to feel valued and chosen and cherished. Most of the time, we're not focused on those things. And it's not our fault. It's evolutionary, right? We evolved as human beings in general in nature to survive, which means that you were looking, and all your senses and all your psyche and your mentality is built to look for the dangers in life that might cause a threat to your survival. Right? Back in caveman day, you walked out of the cave, and your mind was like, where's saber-tooth tiger? Where's saber-tooth tiger? You're making sure that you're safe from a threat. You weren't like, where's that butterfly I saw yesterday? It was so beautiful. I got to watch out for it, right? But today, we have that privilege, because if you're all sitting here in a heart talk in Bali, Indonesia, in the middle of the day, then I'm going to assume you're not in mortal danger. I'm going to assume that you don't have certain survival necessities, but you might have desires and you might have some fears and different things that are up there. But those are part of the stories of your mind. And that, funny enough, is where most of us have been investing our time, our energy, and our feelings and everything else, is in our fears, in the things we're trying to avoid. So when I say invest in life, it's saying invest in what you want from life. Invest in who you want to be in life, rather than what you're trying to run away from. How are you guys doing so far? So we're talking about investing in life. Now this takes us to, let's say, a little more practical level, right? I like to make these heart talks as practical as possible. Before, when I used to give a lot of these talks, I was really abstractly philosophical and all these things, and then my beautiful wife, who's German, she comes to me and she's like, that's wonderful. How do I use that? How do we make that practical? How do we apply it in life? And so, let's make this a little more practical. Right? What does it mean to invest in life? It means that the things that you're choosing, well, actually, let's even backtrack a little bit. What do we want to invest in within life?
Things that bring us joy.
Nice. Things that bring us joy. What else? People we love. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Health and wellness. Yes.
Feel in peace.
Feeling peaceful, right? At ease. Beautiful. What are we most of the time investing in? Escape. Oh, yes. Avoidance and escape. What else? We're avoiding contentment?
Like being content.
Oh, being content. Like avoiding being content. Ooh, that's true. Yeah. And this is where it gets really tricky. Thank you for bringing that up. There's a subtlety of the mind. I see this all the time. People will be like, I ask them, what do you want? They're like, $1 million. I'm like, okay. Why? Well, because I don't want to be poor. Oh, the reality. I want to find the love of my life. Why? Because I don't want to be lonely. Right? So we're still actually acting out of that escape, that fear. And I think we do the same thing in these shortcuts that we're looking for. You know, we look at cryptocurrency, for instance. People have jumped on board on that. And yes, certain investments and things like that, if you invest the time to understand it and the capacity and container of, okay, I'm going to go long run with this. But most people are trying to get the short, quick fix of something. Right? And what that means is that they have an urgency. And what I found in all the work that I've done, both personally and also with many clients, when we have urgency, most of the time it's because we're running from something that we are afraid of, that we're trying to avoid. When we are moving towards what we want, there's no rush because we're being fulfilled in every single step towards it. Progress is already a celebration. But if you feel there's a danger in your present moment, something coming at you or something that might be taken away from you, then you're in a rush to get away from it. Right? So yeah, it's a survival mechanism in a way. And so the moment you know that you're in urgency, the moment you're trying to do a shortcut, you know that you're doing something to avoid instead of to plant those seeds of what you want and to nurture them. Now here's the interesting thing and what gives some confidence to actually planting the seeds and investing in what you really want. If you plant an apple seed, what kind of fruit are you going to get? Apples, right? But what do we do in life? We're like, okay, Rodolfo said, like, plant the seeds of what I want, so I'm going to be joyful. I'm going to plant the seed of joy. But what if it goes sour? What if I get, like, grapes? What if I get this or that? We immediately let all these insecurities and stories come in. And so then what are we investing in? The seed? No, the story of fear instead. And again, like I said earlier, it's not your fault. We have been programmed evolutionarily to focus on the threat instead of on the joy. We have to shift that consciously. We have to intentionally move from what focus of what we're avoiding to the focus of what we want in life, right? And there's a move that you can do. This is a secret ninja strategy. Whatcha? Yes. You guys can join me on that one. I'm going to say it again. If I say ninja strategy in these heart talks, you can join with a whatcha. Secret ninja strategy. Whatcha? That's why I do these things. So here it is. You're looking at most of the time your past, right? Your past is familiar. There's a comfort zone there. You're like, oh, I know what's happened, and I know the things I don't want to have happen again. And you're looking over there in the future, possibilities, potential. It's over here. All you have to do is move from here to here, and you do this. This is the move, right? It's like a Michael Jackson move. You go, hee hee, and you just turn around. I know I make it really simple, but it is. It's about the focus that you take, right? If you find yourself focused on something that you're avoiding, notice it, and then immediately just ask yourself, ooh, what is it that I would like in its place? Not what am I trying to get away from? How can I avoid that? How can I control it? How can I lessen this stress in my life? But how can I bring more joy in my life? That's the difference. Right? The problem is that there's a little middle piece right here that's a little scary for people. Past, familiar. Future, projected, familiar over here. This present moment here, this gets people. Because until you're there, you don't know. Until you become present, you don't know what's there. Which means there has to be a little bit of risk, right? And again, if you've done any kind of business kind of workshops and looked at investing, they always say there's a little risk. Right? And the person who puts the most risk, if you get an investor, for instance, they come, they put all the money forward, they get the best payout out of the deal. Because they put the most risk. They gambled the most. But what I want to make a difference here is not to gamble things, right? Instead of trying to make a big leap towards what you want in life, how about you just start turning slowly towards it and start taking baby steps, literally baby steps, right? Towards what you really want. And the only reason you wouldn't take the baby steps is if you were in a rush, urgency again. Oh, wrong motivation. So we have to start to catch all these little things within the intentions of why we're doing stuff. At some point, and unfortunately for a lot of people, it's at that rock bottom, right? I used to always wonder, why do people wait till rock bottom? And somebody told me one day that they had a theory. They're like, well, because that's when you're so exhausted, you can't fight and resist what life is giving you anymore. Oh. Because most of the time, life is giving you abundance. Because that's nature. It is abundant. But we resist it. We resist it because of the fears of losing it coming in, or comparing that other people have something and then you're not receiving what's coming to you. All these different reasons, right? But the most important thing that I think you said is that at some point you just decided, that's it, that's enough, I want something different. And this is it, and that's the next step of what you were saying. Once you make a choice, you made the comment of like, it took some time, and it will. That's the thing about investments. And that's, again, what I was trying to point out with when we look at even like stock market investments and things like that. The people who really succeed in that, it's because they say, I'm making an investment now, and I will get a return in 10 years. Because I will consistently cultivate that investment. Whereas the difference of, I'm trying to do this now to escape this thing right now, and I hope it works out immediately. Doesn't work. Because the seed you planted is escape, so it'll give you more opportunities to escape. That's the fruit you'll bear. You know, with all the work that many people are doing as a focus of shadow work and like the traumas and clearing those things and trying to, heal all that stuff from our past often, is this actually creating a block towards our future? It's a tricky question. Because on one level, you don't want to ignore it, because it's an unconscious driver within you, right? And so you want to acknowledge it. It's like a small child. If they're coming up and they're tugging on your pant leg, and they're like, hey, 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 hey. And you're like, I'm busy right now. I'm trying to make a life. Like, hey, 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 no, I need to try to survive. Hey, hey. And finally you're like, what? They're like, nothing. All I needed was acknowledgement. If we ignore it, it starts to tug and become louder. That's called spiritual bypass, right? And that's what a lot of people will do. They'll be like, no, everything is beautiful and amazing and I love my life. And then they go home and they cry, right? Don't do that. Don't ignore it, but acknowledge it, and then do not invest in those things. That's the difference. Again, it's an invest in life, in what you want, not what you're avoiding. Most people are very invested in what they're avoiding. Right? Half the people that come to me as clientele, they're like, yeah, I'm trying to get rid of this trauma. I'm trying to get rid of this limiting belief. I'm trying to this. And I'm like, wonderful. Why are you putting so much energy in that? Why not feed the thing you want instead of that? Bring this home a little bit more. One of the things that I do when I work with clients, it's called a Hara assessment, and I'm looking at the organ systems and energetics that run through them, and each of the organs has different associations. Large intestine has the association of elimination. It's letting things go, right? How many of you are having some troubles letting past stuff go, right? A lot of people. Small intestine, the job of small intestine is to integrate, right? To integrate and assimilate, embody things. And it's the same in your actual physical body, right? Food goes into the small intestine after it's been broken down by the stomach acids, and then small intestine soaks up the things that are great. And then whatever is left, it pushes over to the large intestine to let go. So then why, as human beings, when we have all this stuff in our large intestine, stuff that's already occurred, whatever lessons we needed probably have already been soaked up and taken into even our unconscious mind, but we sit there consciously looking at the shit to be like, what else can I learn from this? No, that's to let go. You release that. You don't hold on to the crap, but that's what so many of us are doing. And then because we hold on to it for so long, we're like, I have so much crap. I have to make sure I don't get more crap in the future. So you stop eating. You stop taking in nourishment. You put a barrier up to protect yourself. And this is the thing about barriers, right? Barriers don't just stop what you don't want. They stop everything. Big thing. What's that?
How do you get rid of that?
Thank you for asking. So she's saying, how do you get rid of those barriers? Okay, two things. One, I always talk to people about boundaries, right? Boundaries is a very important thing. It helps you create safety in your life. But if you create your boundaries with barriers, then you're taking away all the support and all the possibilities and all the ability to see clearly because you have something in the way. If instead of a barrier, you used a clarity, an expression, you shared what was real for you and your desires, that's your boundary. I'll share it a little bit differently. Right? Let's say that all you want to do is you want to give the world candy canes. Okay? That's your passion. You want to give the world candy canes. And so you open up a shop. And in this shop, you put a bunch of different things because you heard that, well, it's good to have diverse products and maybe I'll bring people in from this and this. But what I really want to do is I want to sell them candy canes. And then you keep getting people that come in and they're like, oh, can I get a meatloaf? You're like, I don't know. I don't do meatloafs. Can I get some fruit? No, I don't do fruit. And you get frustrated. You're like, screw it. I'm locking the door. Nobody else. We're done. Because you were unclear about what you wanted to do and give and share and receive in life. You just put everything out there. You're like, just anything that somebody might want or just anything that people might want to give me. Right? Most of us are just waiting for life to do something for us, and then we want to judge it and be like, is this really what I want or not want? And if I don't want it, well. So the trick is, instead of waiting, invest in what you want. Say, I would like to give people candy canes. Go get some candy canes and just go out and start giving them. Right? Or make sure that the shop is very clear. Candy cane shop. We only sell candy canes. And I can guarantee that the people who show up, maybe every so often you'll get a weird exception that somebody walks in there for like a pet or something. But most of the time people are going to walk in and be like, I heard you have candy canes. So when we are clear about what we want to be and do and share in life, then that clarity is what draws the right people to us. When we're unclear, most of the time we are unclear because we've not consciously asked ourselves, what do I want? We've not consciously given ourselves the permission and chosen to go for what you want. Once you start to do that, as she was sharing, life changes. Because it's not that all of a sudden new things show up. It's not that a beacon of energy went across the world and touched somebody like, oh, I feel like I should go to Bali. I'm supposed to meet this person now. Sometimes there is energetics that we don't understand. Just a moment.
How do you get permission?
That's where I'm headed. She's ahead of me. Right? Very good. Right? What you're really doing is, as soon as you tell your brain that, ooh, this is what I would like to have in life, your brain goes, oh, well, why didn't you say so? It's been here the whole time. I just was ignoring it. Because that's what your brain does. Whatever you tell your brain is significant, it assumes it's for your survival. And in that respect, it goes, okay, I'm only going to show you this thing. Most of the time it's what you were avoiding, and so it keeps showing you the things to avoid. And I'm going to filter out from your consciousness and your senses everything else so that it doesn't distract you. So then all the possibilities and all the potentials and all these other things. And we take away permission first because all of a sudden we've been doing that for so long that we think, I just don't deserve it because it's never showing up for me. It is, we're just not seeing it. We're not recognizing those potentials and possibilities. And so we come back to the word just a second of what many of you said, curiosity. That's how you give yourself permission. I have 3 pillars that I live by. The first one is acceptance. That's realizing and recognizing the reality of this moment. It doesn't mean you have to like it. That's, I think, the fallacy. People think that acceptance means that you have to be okay with it. Right? Well, that sucks. No. You just have to recognize the reality. Stop investing in the story of what you think it is. Become real. Right? And then once you do that, permission is allowing for change. Yes, allowing for the possibility of change. That's all it has to be. But most of us associate permission with worth. And we think, well, I can only give myself permission if I've proven worthy, if I've done the work, if I've suffered enough, if I'm old enough, if I'm young enough, if I'm strong enough. And because we tie it to worth, it becomes arbitrary. And in all those stories that created insecurity in you and took away that worth, and all those places you fragmented yourself into all these defensive walls, they make you unworthy, and then you'll never give yourself permission. So instead, what you want to do is say, oh, permission is about just seeing that there might be a different possibility for me and for life. It's normally the second question I ask people after I say, what do you want? And I say, is that possible for you? Comparison. When you start looking around at other people and you're comparing your life to theirs, and you're like, I want that. Why don't I have that? And I think that's the real question we're asking. Why don't I have that? Which means that you're assuming that they just got it randomly. That it was luck of the draw, right? And most of the time it's not. Every single one of us in this room and everywhere else has gone through a process. Sometimes that process was easier or more difficult, and I believe the only difference is whether you resist or not, right? When we resist life, the process will be more difficult. And that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be discomfort. But the longer you resist it, the more discomfort. It's like taking a Band-Aid off, right? If you're just like, okay, whew. Or if you're like, ow, 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 oh, it's on the hair now, ow, 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 right? And so we let go of resistance and we get curious and we start to open up to possibilities. Coming back to this idea with permission and curiosity. It means just saying to yourself, there's a possibility, at least it exists, that somebody else at least is experiencing it, right? So then you go, okay, happiness is possible. Now you have to say happiness is possible for me. And I think that is one of the hardest things for people to do if you're feeling a lack of self-worth, right? If you're judging yourself for anything. And that's where the more practical element comes in. And it's to say, okay, it wasn't simply because that other person just deserved it. It's because they did the work for it, right? The choice is what's immediate and instant. The choice to say, I'm worthy of this, I can invest in life. And then after that, you consistently do the work. And work doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be consistent. Right?
Currency is almost like...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ooh, I love that. The currency is an energy and time. Right? And it is. Because the moment that we don't have something that's dynamic, moving through things, right? That's what I love actually about how we call money and things a currency, right? That it's a current, it's moving. But what do? We hold it and we try to hold it in place, especially if it's something that we liked and that we're enjoying in that moment. We're like, no, I don't want it to change. But you do want it to change. You want it to grow. And so you invest in that growth instead of investing in not losing it. Right? That's the key. But it does take this courage to take that risk to move towards what you want instead of just trying to control what you don't. When you found yourself exhausted and stagnant in life, and you're looking for that inspiration, you're looking for that passion, how do you start that process? And this is where it's tricky because most people, one, they haven't accepted where they're at, right? You're like, but I'm exhausted here, I don't want to be here, so no, I don't want to accept that this is where I'm at. But you have to, because otherwise, you don't know where you're starting from. And so then no matter what baby step I give you, no matter what I say of like, this is the first step to do, but from where? So acceptance is key. Recognize the reality of where you're at now. The next key is to orient yourself towards what you want. Now to do that, you also have to have the capacity to focus on what you want, not on what you don't want, which means you need safety. Right? Safety is probably the pervading philosophy in everything that I do, from these talks to my sessions to everything. It's create safety first. Because without it, we will always have a biological drive to survive. Right? And safety isn't just about our physical sense, but it's emotional, mental, right? If I was to randomly pick one of you and be like, hey, you're going to come up and finish the talk, right? Public speaking being statistically one of the scariest things for a lot of people. You know, you might be like, God, oh, I would die if I had to go up there. Would you really? Your nervous system thinks so. So lack of safety, right? A lot of times in relationships, if the relationship wasn't based on choosing into the relationship from both parties, choosing to grow together, then there is a constant danger of it breaking apart, which means the nervous system is constantly unsafe, which means you never really settle into it. And this is what causes a lot of the reasons that something breaks up eventually, or that you lose yourself, because you're constantly trying to people please to make sure you don't lose the relationship. So instead, choose safety first. It's funny. It's one of the first things I ask people that when they're coming for relationship stuff specifically. I said, what do you want from a relationship? And they'll name all these different things and all this stuff. And I'll say, would you like safety? They're like, oh, yeah, that would be nice. That should be the first thing, that you feel safe in connection with another, that you feel safe, especially in connection with yourself. You know, this is huge. Half of the work that I get to do with people is to help them come back to safety in their own body. Because we have, through media and conditioning and all this self-judgments and all these things, we've created a mistrust between our personality and our physicality. We're always upset with ourselves. And I'm no stranger to it. My back went out like 4 years ago. And every so often when it starts to tinge up, I notice a little voice in my head is like, oh, come on, body. Instead of, oh, come on, body, we got this, right? And that's the investment of focus, saying, what do I want? Do I want to be angry at this? Do I want to try to avoid the pain? Or do I want to make sure that I have the strength to move through it? Right? And that would be building up like muscles and things like that to support, right? Investing instead of just waiting to try to avoid a danger. So there's two ways in which we might feel safety, right? Where maybe it's not really safety. Because the mind can justify safety very easily. But we have to actually get the body, the nervous system, to feel safe. So one of them is that we have armored ourselves up so much. We have, all these literally shields and all this other stuff, and we're there and we're like, ha, nothing can touch me. But then you're stagnant because you literally can't move, right? You're not going anywhere. So that's one form in which we have created safety, really comfort, and then we're not moving out of it. The other form of safety is when we're disassociated from everything, right? We've gone numb. That we've stopped being in our body, we've stopped being in our senses, and we're just kind of like, no, everything's fine. And again, this is a spiritual bypass kind of method where you're just living a happy life, but you're actually not. You're not really there. In either one of those, the point is to come back to your own body, your own senses, and to do so safely. Now, the mind is going to work against you a little bit because the mind doesn't like change. Right? It's like, yes, but we've been armoring up like this and you're still surviving, so why would we let go of any of this armor? Are you crazy? No, hold it all up. We're going to add more, right? And so you let go of a little piece, right? Maybe it's like a little shield on the knee. You put that down, right? And then it's, a lot of times we don't just have the shielding. We have like spears and daggers and things. Right? You let the weapons go, right? That's when you get so in your protective measures that somebody comes over to you and they're like, hey, would you like, no, get away from me. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to help, right? And so actually opening to support, these kind of things. We take these baby steps to get the mind to be okay with small changes. We can take it even smaller and just do something like get up on the other side of your bed. Brush your teeth with the opposite hand, right? Do things like that, because what it does is it tells your mind, like at first it'll freak out a little bit. It'll be really funny. Literally, do the toothbrush thing. There'll be a little moment in your mind that's like, we're going to kill ourselves. Why are we doing this? And then you'll get a little more comfortable with it. And you'll be like, oh, okay. And then the brain goes, we didn't die. It's okay to have little changes. Okay. And then it'll allow you to make more changes and more changes as you start moving towards what you really want. Right? Essentially, you are cultivating adaptability, which is, especially in today's exponential world where things are changing so quickly, you really want to cultivate. When life is going beautifully, you're sailing on this boat, everything's wonderful, but then you got like a few other boats that are like, hey, why do you have such a nice sail? Why is your motor running so well? Right? If you're dealing with jealousy, funny enough, we did a talk on that a few weeks ago. You have to start to look at two things, right? The first, are they people that you really need to be keeping in your life? Right? And it doesn't mean that you cut them off. It means you stop investing in them. And that means your attention, your energy, because this is what we do, right? We're like, things are going so well and it's bothering this person. Let me just bring myself down, right? We cut ourselves down to try to fit in. But who are we fitting in with? Other people who are afraid, often, to grow. So instead, let yourself rise. If they are inspired by that, they'll rise with you. If they're not, that's their journey. But you're not going to end up alone. I think that's why we cut ourselves down, because we get afraid that we're going to be alone, right? But instead, what happens is you rise up, and it's as if you were sitting at a table, you were all having the same meal, and you're like, I want something else to eat. And you stand up, and then at first you might feel alone. You just sit back down. And you're like, no, let me stand up. And you look around, and it's a banquet hall. There's many other tables, and there's other people standing up. That's the new community that will support you to the next level and the next level of your own growth, right? And so it's not being afraid of change is the biggest piece. Then the other piece of it is to share the abundance that comes through you. And I'm going to be really specific about this, and I'll come to you. When I talk about abundance, it's not just to realize that there really is an abundance of the most important things in our life, which is feelings. That's the thing we really want, right? We don't want even the experiences per se, or the money, or the possessions. We want the feeling it gives us, the emotions that come with it. You can choose that in any moment. There is an abundance of that. There is no limit to you getting to feel happy. Have you ever thought about that? Right? And yet, in jealousy, we look, oh, why are they so happy? Why don't I have any happiness? Have some happiness. Nobody's stopping you. Right? So, instead of comparing, that comes back to your question, right? You come back to, what am I choosing? And what am I investing in? Right? Am I investing in that they have happiness and I don't? Well, then you don't have happiness. That's what you created for yourself. Or am I investing in, oh, they have happiness. That's a good idea. I'll have some happiness too. Thank you. Right? Even now, you look around, people are smiling, and that's a contagious thing. All you have to do is look at somebody smiling. Then you can't help but start to smile too. So abundance, for me, isn't just realizing that there's an infinite amount of emotion and feeling that we can have and that we can choose. But it's also giving yourself enough that your cup is overflowing. And this is where it gets a little tricky also, because we've been taught that being selfish is a bad thing. I don't think so. I think go out and be as selfish as you can. Now that doesn't mean that you do it by taking from others. It doesn't mean that you do it and then you're greedy about it. It means be selfish in your self-care. Be selfish in honoring your truth. Be selfish in doing the things that are meaningful to you. Invite others to join you if you like, but don't take it away from others. That's the difference, right? You want to take it away from others if you don't think it's abundant. And people do that, even with happiness. They're like, I can only be happy if they're miserable. And this is where I say, fill up your own cup, right? And then fill it up so much in that selfishness of self-care that it overflows. Because what we're really doing when we go around to other people and we've had this amazing experience, maybe you came to a workshop or a retreat or a heart talk, and you go and you want to share it with people and you're so excited. But what's normally happening is you're like, oh, if they could just hear this, then they would get it, and they would be happy, and I did that for them. And all this stuff. You're right. It's ego to some extent. And it's also desire to help other people. But you're trying to force it. When instead, if you simply keep filling yourself up, you overflow. And in that overflow, it touches the people around you, right? Naturally. We've been talking about investing in life. And we're looking at this not as just an investment of how can I get the quick riches, how can I get the quick abundance, how can I become happy quick, but rather an investment of time and dedication, a commitment to a container of cultivating something. Saying, ooh, I choose this in my life and that's what I want, and I'm going to move towards it even if it's in baby steps. Because in every single step I'm cultivating both a confidence and a foundation of that thing that I want. And as you do that, all of a sudden, these things that we really want, these feelings, these emotions, we're building them up into a bank account instead of the bank account of fear and avoidance that we were doing unconsciously. And so we continue to, with intention and conscious action, move towards what we really want in life. And to do so, we sometimes have to figure out that we're worth it. And that worthiness is simply by taking some of the bricks that we placed as protection and taking those out, reintegrating them into the energy of our own being. And letting clarity be what creates our boundary instead of a barrier. And the more that you do that, the more confident you become. The more clarity that you get, the more you orient yourself towards that mountaintop that you're trying to get to. And eventually you realize you don't ever have to get up there. That just walking in that direction is enough because you're investing in life instead of the destination or instead of the place you're running from. And with that, I'll end today's talk. Thank you.